Welcome back to the channel with the least amount of hair. It's Gamer Muscle Videos, and in this video we're going to be answering the question, why are Simracers so moody, miserable, depressed and generally angry? Tighten your seatbelts. Off we go. Now, if you've ever visited a sim racing forum for any of the main sims, you'll notice there's quite a lot of argumentation. And it's not even limited to the individual forums. You just go on sites like VirtualR, BSim Racing, Race Department, any place where sim racers congregate together to talk, you find people essentially smashing their heads against brick walls, getting frustrated, and all round being rather moody. It's like being at the border in Israel. One side throwing stones, the other firing machine guns and tank shells. Ultimately, if you stand in the middle of it all for too long, not only does a tank likely run over you, but you just get depressed and wonder what the point of existence is. Fortunately, there are happy people to brighten the mood and make everyone feel good. But what I really think is interesting is why are sim racers so apparently moody? Now, first of all, I actually don't think they are really that moody, miserable, or actually angry. I think what happens primarily online is that the internet and writing is not the most effective method of conveying the tone of a conversation. Add to that people that are perhaps a little bit more bedroom dwelling and a little bit less diplomatic, sort of in the Donald Trump school of diplomacy, and you end up with comments that come across as if a deranged monkey's danced around on a keyboard and then press the enter key to submit the comment. Often you actually find people that come across as really argumentative and are fairly irritating in many ways, but they actually do have good points inside of the comments and they're making perfectly valid arguments. It's just that there's missiles firing all over the place, so no actual value comes out of the conversations. That said, though, and the communication issues of typing and trying to talk through typing, I definitely think, sim racers are pretty up there when it comes to the internet argumentation about their specific games. Now, this happens in all communities, Call of Duty, FIFA, you name it, Intel versus AMD, the same sort of things happen. But I think there's definitely a collection of people within the sim racing scene where it is on a new level of train spotter absurdity where this nitpicking and argumentation comes in. And I think if you look at sim racing, it shouldn't really be that much of a surprise that you end up with these sort of hypercritical people in the sim racing scene. Because sim racing, especially for people that have spent more time at it and are getting to the more competitive levels, requires you to be hypercritical of your actual performance and improving your performance and noticing what are, relative to many other sports and many other games and many other activities, really minute things that you have to improve on. And when you're talking about the difference between really good sim racers and slightly better than average sim racers, the difference is a difference in hundredths, or if not hundredths, even tenths of a second, which requires hours of dedication to get that last bit of performance out and to get your body to actually do the inputs into the game to get the required end result. Even outside of the hyper-competitive trying to be the world's fastest gamer, thank you McLaren, I'll accept my sponsorship money through PayPal. Seeing as you've got lots of money, a couple of thousand, that'll cover it. But even if you're not trying to be the world's fastest gamer, just to get to a moderate level in a given simulator actually is pretty damn hard. Even more so if you don't happen to have natural racing talent and charm and just generally being really sexy, such as myself. If you don't have that, then it takes even more effort, and that's with one simulator. So you take someone that's got good at a specific simulator, they've learnt its inherent physics, and they've been told it's a simulator, so it's a simulation of reality, and they should expect the same thing from other simulations, other simulations of reality, because, reality is reality, it kind of stays the same. They then jump into their new simulator, or whatever simulator they picked, and find it's pretty different from what they've been playing, and even worse, all the things that they learnt to respond to in terms of what the force feedback was telling them and how the cars moved in many ways and how the sounds are different, everything else, it seems to have changed a lot to the point that they're now actually pretty crap at it. Or even if they're alright at it, all the things that they learnt with the previous game to get around when the back end of the car steps out, or when the force feedback tells them something, and the timings for correcting the vehicle, or how long certain types of vehicle take to stop, or how much grip a car should have around the corner, all those things are now different and require different methods of approach. You could see how this could be pretty bloody frustrating. It's as if you were a tennis player. You got really good at grass court tennis. You were really comfortable with it. Maybe you're not Andre Agassi. That makes me sound really old. Maybe you're not, I was going to say Tim Henman, still old. Maybe you're not Roger Federer. I didn't Google that. You're just an average player. But you've got good, you're comfortable, you can get your serves, the ball goes where you expect it to go, you know how it's going to bounce off the grass, you know how to do your forehand and your backhand in response to how fast the ball's going and in response to what the other player does. You're fairly comfortable at it whilst playing against other people to a similar level to yourself. And you go to another court because everyone said this court's bloody fantastic, it's fantastically maintained. Amazing court, gorgeous women watching, or men if you're a woman, just to make this analogy unisex. Amazing court. So you go there and it looks fantastic, but the moment you start playing, you're like, oh, hang on, the ball's bouncing different. And then you dive on the floor and your knees are bleeding, and you're like, oh, that's strange. No one else is diving on the floor, but I did. Why are my knees bleeding? They didn't bleed on the grass. And for some reason, every time the opponent hits the ball at you, it bounces twice as high and 3 times as fast. What is going on, you're thinking to yourself? This is bananas. I hate this. I hate this court. Never playing here again. And that's because the court that you've gone to is a concrete court, but no one's thought to actually tell you that. And for some reason, you're also blind and unable to immediately tell that it's a concrete court. It's where the analogy falls down. But the point is, the physics have changed, and if everyone was to then continue to pretend that it was actually a grass court, it would be really frustrating, especially when you've got used to a grass court, but all these other people have got used to a concrete court. And so you'd then go to, you'd want to complain and be like, well, this court's totally wrong. And this is kind of what happens with driving simulators, in that each simulator is essentially a different court because it has different physics rules. Even though they're all trying to be the same thing, they all do attempt the same thing, and they all get pretty damn close to it if you're to take a step back from sim racing and just admire them as works of modern art and real-time physics that they are. They're pretty damn spectacular, all of them. But once you get inside of it and put a lot of time into one of them, the differences are fairly large. Now, the nice thing with concrete courts over grass courts in reality is that most people agree that a concrete court is not a grass court. There's no need to really argue about it because everyone can see it's a different type of court. But with simulators, they're all presented, marketed, and look to be the same thing. Even worse, each community that's gotten into, and often it was the first simulator they really spent a lot of time with, their simulator is what they are claiming to be reality, or the closest to reality. So, you can see why this then causes people to start butting heads and argue about the differences and what they like and dislike. Now, if it was just a case of that, that was it, it's just different simulators having differences, and I think people, for the most part, most civil people, even argumentative and even hypercritical people, can generally go through a list of things and, for the most part, go, okay, I kind of agree about this specific feature with the sim, I prefer this and that, and these are the reasons why. And even if someone doesn't like how that sim's maybe say how it handled in a certain way with certain cars, they would probably agree and concede that, oh yeah, this other sim does this, actually does it worse or better, and agree and disagree for the various reasons, the various situations in which the cars handle different and for whatever reason. Where it gets even worse with driving simulators in terms of making it a total mess is the difference of perception from the simulators that occurs, not only from the simulators but from the hardware that you actually use to play the simulators. A big one being the steering wheels that you use, and that consumer force feedback wheels are massively different, even from each consumer wheel to each consumer wheel, and none of them actually line up with what a simulator's putting out in terms of what's required to automatically correct cars automatically rotate quickly, and give realistic force feedback strength and everything else that normally with real world cars would be a default thing. So you have all these people with different equipment, and not only the steering wheels, you also have people with different pedals. Some pedals make things a lot harder and a lot less intuitive than other pedals, or how you set those pedals up as well completely change the feel and the end result of driving a simulator. So you get all this murky mess, and then the subjective component of it, and then the fact that each simulator is actually different and all claiming to be reality. I think this is why driving simulators and sim racers come across as some of the most mental people in terms of arguing about specifics, the train spotter level of argumentation, and why people get so frustrated. I think these are the main reasons that really cause it, and I don't think it's a bad thing personally. I find it quite entertaining. I've had my fair share of tire model arguments and criticism of different simulators. I've got angry in the past. Fairly chilled out these days. I don't know what's that old age. When you lose your hair, you just chill out. So I don't know what happens there. But you know, that's part of growing up. You've got to have your sim racing arguments. If you haven't had a good sim racing argument online, lost your temper a bit, or made someone else lose their temper, then you've not lived, as far as I'm concerned, and you're not a real sim racer. Now, I would say, separate to all that, it is nice when people actually have productive conversations, and I think this is really separate to sim racing, in that a lot of people, myself included in many ways, and also partly because of just typing on the internet is a bloody disaster, but a lot of people in general as well, I think, do struggle to actually make clear arguments, and I can only blame the education systems around the world for that. You know, we are taught in England, we're taught completely useless stuff first, and then they hope you to learn the useful stuff later on. And by useful stuff, in my opinion, critical thinking should probably be one of the first things you start teaching, and then maybe like logical fallacies, and then basic methods of actually conversing in a way to get to the details, and ways of avoiding things like ad hominem attacks where someone just calls someone a name. Got some delightful comments on my YouTube channel. Opening gambit being, you're a fucking moron, and you're wrong. But it's like, great, maybe I am, but you've got to put like an actual bit of information in there to form an argument. So I think that's the only real negative that seems to have happened more recently, especially it happens on the YouTube comments. But maybe it's actually a positive. Maybe a lot of those people are just younger people that are getting into it. Maybe it shows that sim racing is starting to branch out more into the Call of Duty communities, and that's just part of its growth. And ultimately, from a sort of pragmatic viewpoint, I think you just have to take, it's not negativity, but take stuff that's not particularly useful and then try and actually approach it in a positive way, because that's the only thing you can really do. Aside from maybe cheese grating your face, putting your head in the microwave occasionally to try and cleanse yourself from complete mental breakdown. Easier said than done, but you know, you've got to try. And I think you can be a pessimist about things and an optimist. I can see that sim racing's gone both ways. I think in some ways there's more negativity, and you know, people are generally critical of stuff, and maybe people do feel a bit more entitled, or you know, you can call them entitled. But then I think that's just people that, a large part of it is people that actually really love driving simulators and driving games, and they just want more of it, and they see the various issues or things that they want in a given game, and then the only way they know to highlight that is to complain about it or come across in a way that seems demanding. Or maybe they've just really got into a specific racing sim themselves, and maybe through spending a lot of time with it, maybe through spending a lot of time arguing about it on the given forum, they want to defend their thing that they happen to like the most. Yeah, in many ways it's really annoying, but it shows that people are actually want to actually defend driving simulators and really, I don't know, spend a lot of time with something. It's absurd, but I think it shows that driver simulators have moved through the sort of stillborn in the incubator phase and are now going through a sort of teenager phase. Spots, BO, tissues all over the bedroom, and all the other stuff associated with it. one day it'll be an adult. I'm not sure if it'll progress in human years, but, you know, one day, and when that day comes, Jesus will descend from the sky. Actually, it's the other way around. We will all ascend up to heaven, where everyone will have direct drive wheels and perfect sim rigs, and all the physics will literally be 1-to-1, 100% simulation value. But there you go. I think that's the best I can do in describing why sim racers are angry, or at least why they seem angry. And actually, in reality, I don't think sim racers are really angry. I think most of them are actually enjoying playing the games more so than they ever have. So on that note, congratulations for listening to my voice for 15 minutes and 40 seconds. That's quite an incredible achievement. I wouldn't be surprised if the Secret Service in America take my videos and play them on loop to prisoners in Guantanamo Bay for them to give up all the secrets. Now that, you know, waterboarding's gone out of fashion and they needed something worse than waterboarding and even worse than Barney the dinosaur on loop, they just play sim racing videos. All the secrets have been given up. Terrorism stopped. Congratulations to myself for saving the world, of course. That does, of course, mean that I'm saying that you guys watching this are effectively voluntarily waterboarding yourselves. But, you know, if you enjoy it, I can't stop you. So, definitely, if you want more torture, click the subscribe button, likey, dislikey, and maybe start a tire model argument in the comments section. They're always good fun. Till the next one, guys, I'm going to go and sit in my sim rig and cry quietly to myself. Goodbye.